Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia. That, of course, is Kyle Yates, and it's you. And today it's all about the trade targets and what we're doing rest of season, the risers, the fallers, a little Monday Night Football recap as well. And Yates, it certainly was an eventful game to see how many times that the Ravens could lose that game. And apparently they were going for a record, and it looked like Derek Carr was going for a record, too, in terms of targeting tight ends.
It was ridiculous. I'm sitting there in like the end of the third quarter. I'm like, why am I still watching this game? Like, I should go to sleep right now. And I did. I went to sleep when it was 17-10. I woke up. Everyone was like, this was the greatest game ever. What happened? And then I watched back through it. Oh, yeah, that's what happened. That was ridiculous. Yeah, 19 targets for Darren Waller last night. Absolutely absurd.
And as far as what's kind of captivating us here in week 2 of the NFL, it's definitely 49er talk. And I can't think of a better guest to talk about that with than Mr. 49er. I don't know if he's got answers, but I know he's got opinions about it. You know him from In This League. He's the one, the only, the Welsh. Welcome back, the Welsh, to the show. It is good to see you, my friend.
Oh, the piece of Pia, the Yates, welcome. Welcome to my glorious Deebo fest that I get here. Joe does know that he immediately received a text from me post Deebo game where I said, hey, why don't you guys at Fantasy Pro, why don't you cut up that little clip where I came on and bold predictions with Deebo. I'm like, don't maybe do the Antonio Gibson one, or don't do the Raheem Mostert one I said on here.
No.
But clip that Deebo one.
Yes, it's all about selective clipping and selective victory laps. That's absolutely what
That's how fantasy works, by the way. Don't you guys know that?
Yeah.
You only put out the good takes, you ignore all the bad takes, and that's how this game works. That's how we win.
It absolutely is. And the other thing that helps you, of course, is my playbook. That's right. It's got all the tools you need, including the trade analyzer, which we're using to kind of power the show today. That's right. It's like the Energizer battery of tools for the show today that we're going to be bringing to you. And you can only get it at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. You've got, it gives you instant analysis of every trade offer. It has the trade finder that helps you discover trades that can and will help you win leagues and make it your own. You can personalize it. And obviously anything you want to do there with the trade offers, you can take different players, different combinations, different leagues, go through everything and do it all in one place. And that's what my playbook is all about. It's about efficiency of time, especially if you're a nut like us and you've got a dozen leagues or even 4. You got 4 leagues. That's sometimes a lot for people to manage. You've got kids and a life and all the other things going on in life. That's what my playbook's all about. And the trade analyzer will help you do that. And I know what you're saying, Joe, but how do I get it? How do I get it in a very cost-effective way? And I've got an answer for you. It's fantasypros.com/offers. All you got to do is make a $10 deposit on one of our partner sites. Any of them, make that deposit, enter a contest, and boom, just like that, you get 6 free months of our Hall of Fame package over at Fantasy Pros. That's a $65 value. And guess what? The Hall of Fame package gets you my playbook, will get you trade analyzer. Everything comes full circle, and you're all set. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, there's so many things there. Welsh is counting them, and that's why you watch us on YouTube.
All these deals, these are great.
Right, $10, boom, just like that. You got all these tools. And I got to tell you, my playbook this week was so useful to me. I was going through all the different leagues. I've been over a dozen leagues this year, and just looking at all the different moves and the things and the different lineup things. It is, I'm telling you, going to make your life so much easier. Please go check it out if you have not already. Welsh, let's get your take real fast because Monday Night Football, certainly we wanted to see Tyson Williams. We wanted to see what the Raiders offense was going to look like. They ran so much motion. I was getting sick watching them because every single play somebody was in motion, which only tells me one thing, Welsh. And that is, we don't really match up very well with the talent. We don't really like the talent. We're looking for mismatches everywhere we can find it. That's not a very good long-term strategy. But what were your thoughts about both sides of this game?
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders showed a lot of inability of, like, preparation. That was from the last second. I mean, listen, I had a fantastic watching this game overall. Part of it was, I just have to throw this in, I had a perfect betting night. I just want to say that, like on my bets, gambling. How often do you have that? I was like 7 for 7.
Is your back hurt from all the padding that you've been doing since you've been on the show?
It was a lot of it. My pockets are actually, my hips hurt from my pockets being held down by all the cash that I made last night. But a couple things I would say. Tyson looked really, really good. I'm a little bit worried about what happened late. I got this from Nathan Janke on Twitter. Through the mid-third quarter, the snap count was 26-7 in favor of Williams. But through the middle of the third to the end, that snap count ended 35-21, still in favor of Williams to Latavius Murray. But in that time, what would that be? Probably roughly 20 minutes. 9 to Williams, 14 to Murray. Murray was really, really prevalent in the second half. So how crazy we are, I know we're going to talk about Tyson Williams later, comes into play. The Waller stuff is just unreal. He is unreal. But I will tell you this. Whether it's full PPR or betting on props of like receptions, Hunter Renfrow was an absolute dude. David Carr is going to depend on him all year long. They called him the best player on the team. He's always looking for him. For a team that is Waller, Renfrow's a guy that is going to see a ton of targets in what looks like a really inept offense and defense, to be fair, that this team is going to be reeling like this at the end of games, and you're going to see dump-off passes to Hunter Renfrow. So I was impressed with Hunter Renfrow. Waller is just such a stud. He could have had 15 catches in this game had he just not dropped so many. But Tyson Williams, Waller, Renfrow, those are kind of my biggest takeaways, outside of it being this incredible back and forth of nonsense and overtime. I haven't had that much fun on a Monday night, and I don't even know how long.
Well, and of course it also means garbage time for Derek Carr, which is great because I got a lot of Derek Carr waiting for those rookie quarterbacks to really pop. So I was able to slide him in. Garbage points are garbage points. Who cares? Or they're coming from behind, whatever. It doesn't matter. Welsh is right. They're going to probably be slinging the football because they're going to have to. Tyson Williams, Yates, what did you see there? I saw him catching the football a lot more than I thought that was going to happen. That was my biggest takeaway was, oh, well, look at this. We could throw him the football. And he looked pretty good to me, but then he kind of disappeared there. I know there were some exchange issues, some other problems. But to me, I feel like this kid showed you at least the promise of week 2 to be very confident in him.
The first takeaway is, man, what would J.K. Dobbins have looked like this year in this offense, right? With them dumping the ball off like they did to Tyson Williams, J.K. Dobbins would have just had a massive year, so it's so upsetting. But Tyson Williams looked great. He ends up with 9 attempts on the ground for 65 yards. Latavius Murray had 10, but only 28 yards rushing. They each find the end zone. Tyson Williams looked like the better back. Now, as we moved into the second half, I think that they had Latavius Murray on the field because it was so close. And with Tyson Williams, we just don't know what his pass blocking chops are. And I think that was the main thing there, why Latavius Murray was in as that veteran presence. We know that he can pass block. Right. And I think that was the big thing why he was on the field. So I am not running away from Tyson Williams in fantasy. I'm looking to acquire him on the cheap if I can. I really don't think that you can on the cheap because he did look so good for those who watched this game. So Tyson Williams moving forward is absolutely someone that we should be looking at for fantasy purposes.
Yates, in week 2, would you start Ronald Jones because it looks like he's out of the doghouse? We're hearing he's the starter again against Atlanta. Or would you start Tyson Williams as an RB2 this week if you had to?
Yeah, I'm going with Tyson Williams there. I just do not want any piece of this Buccaneers backfield. Okay. It's just going to be a complete mess. So whereas with Tyson Williams, we're probably going to see Latavius Murray involved, but I don't think he's going to be efficient. I think that Tyson Williams is the better back at this point of their career, and I think he's the better bet here to return value on where, as an RB2 for your lineup.
All right, let's get to the most traded players of the early season. And wouldn't you know it, the first guy? Tyson Williams, that's right, unbelievable. The guy that people want to get rid of now because they want to sell high, and the people want to acquire him because, well, they had J.K. Dobbins and somebody else pick them up. So there's a lot to unpack here. Welsh, let's start with you with this. Give me your thoughts last night on Tyson Williams, and then I'm going to give you a couple trade scenarios potentially of whether or not you want to be purchasing him or if you want to be trading him away. But what were your thoughts on what you saw from Tyson last night?
Yeah, I thought he looked great. I thought he looked good outside of like the miscues with Lamar Jackson. He looks exactly like the Ravens running back. It's kind of reminiscent of Eli Mitchell. Eli Mitchell with San Francisco, he just got 19 carries with it. Had you given 19 carries to Tyson Williams, I think he probably would have gone over 100. The problem is Baltimore just doesn't do that. I'm going to stick to what I said before. I'm a little worried that he disappeared in that 4th and late 3rd. And I know it's silly, but Le'Veon Bell is still there. And they've got Freeman. And how much are they going to trust? Is Tyson Williams, can he thrive in a Alvin Kamara role where he catches 3 passes and he gets 9 to 12 carries? He can. I think he could be a flex, but is his upside going to be of the J.K. Dobbins? I'm just not so sure. This team has been hampered by injuries. I think they're a little gun shy. They've got 4 backs in there and they completely went away from the rookie. So I'm in with you, but I do worry that there's going to be some weeks where if we're holding him to high standards, we might have an opportunity to be disappointed because, Lamar's the leading rusher. They brought in all these guys. we just don't know enough about this backfield even after 1 week.
Well, it sounds like if Tyson Williams were on your roster, you'd be willing to listen to offers. So let's entertain a few right now. Let's start with this one. A.J. Dillon for Tyson Williams. Would you want to be trading away Tyson Williams and acquiring A.J. Dillon, or vice versa?
Give me Tyson Williams.
How about you, Yates, in that scenario?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Tyson Williams. With A.J. Dillon, based on everything that we saw from this Packers offense on Sunday, it's not an offense that I want to invest in.
It's going to be better.
I think with Williams, yeah, they're definitely going to bounce back, but A.J. Dillon's still the backup here to Aaron Jones. So with Tyson Williams, he has the potential to see weekly, fantasy value. Whereas with A.J. Dillon, you're kind of just holding him in hopes that something maybe happens to Aaron Jones and you can plug him in as a starter.
All right, here's another guy, too, that's been traded a lot for Tyson Williams, Jamaal Williams. So a Williams swap here, Yates. This guy is getting some touches of the football. So does this change the calculus for you at all? Which end of this deal would you prefer to be on?
This is a little bit closer. For me, with Jamaal Williams, I think that you are going to see him heavily involved as a receiver. With Tyson Williams, we know that he can catch the football, but what's that going to look like when you have Rashad Bateman come back into this lineup, right? And the offense is as healthy as it can be. So what does that look like? With Jamaal Williams, I know that Jared Goff is going to target his running backs. I know that he's not going to look at the wide receivers. So I might actually go with Jamaal Williams here, just basing it off. It's a gross thing to go from the Baltimore Ravens offense, which is a pretty high-powered offense, to then the Detroit Lions offense, but I actually might do that.
I think I would do it as well. And because I'm a little concerned with what Welsh is putting out there, the more bodies that start getting opportunities, the more muddy these waters get. Welsh, Jamaal Williams or Tyson Williams, which end of this trade do you prefer?
Yeah, sweep it. I'm going to take Jamaal Williams in here. I mean, I think he was targeted 9 times in the passing game. He got the early downs. He looked great. I mean, I don't think people were prepared for how great he was. One of the props, Jamaal Williams had a 9-yard receiving prop for this week, and he went well over that. Yeah, I took that, by the way. It was one of my good bets. 9 receiving yards, I believe it was, and he's heavily involved. And I just don't think people are fully aware how duo this is, and they looked relatively efficient. So, yeah, give me Jamaal Williams pretty easy over Tyson Williams. Even though they're in the close range, I feel very comfortable with Jamaal Williams.
Yeah, Williams was the guy that I've been acquiring a ton of in drafts because of that same thing. It's like, look, can I start him as a flex guy or in those 2 flex leagues, those deeper leagues where I got to look for somebody who's going to touch the football? Yeah, I think you can. With Tyson Williams, once again, it was a good start. It was a lot of positive things, but we still don't know, so take advantage. Would you guys be trying to sell him high off of last night, and do you think you can still, Welsh?
Ooh, I think you can't. It's always the same thing. High is relative. Like, what is that? I think people are excited that he got all the early downs. I think plenty of people, especially more novice, if you're playing in, just more like your buddies leagues and stuff like that, they're not going to pay attention to him disappearing in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, I do believe that people can see him as like a mid RB2. They just might throw in, hey, he gets the Gus Edwards romp, but I don't know. It just depends what it is. If I could get like a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver, it'd have to probably be a low wide receiver 2 for me to consider it. You're not going to really trade him in a running back trade, so it'd probably have to be like a low end wide receiver 2 that someone's really desperate at running back, and I would consider it.
I know Yates doesn't like the Ronald Jones one, but Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette, would you want either of those guys back in a trade for Tyson Williams? Welsh?
I guess. Oh no!
Oh, yeah.
No, absolutely not. I'm sorry. No,
Just
I'm
asking.
sorry. I was like, yeah, no, I agree. The Ronald Jones, like,
Because
I
they've
was
got
kind of
Atlanta coming up this week, and if there's going to be a correction, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be against the Atlanta Falcons.
No, and I agree with that. But my problem with the Tampa Bay running back situation is kind of like on steroids of the other ones we have. Like we're looking at Baltimore, and we're like, hey, there's 4 guys. There might be different guys every single week. We truly don't know. And we're now into years of not knowing who is it going to be on a weekly basis. Right. What we do know is if Ronald Jones makes one mistake, he's out. And that's volatile. So no, I don't want Ronald Jones. And Leonard Fournette just doesn't look good. We are 2 weeks away from having a number 1 RB in Tampa Bay of Gio Bernard, where Gio Bernard is going to be the top scorer, and then we're all going to hate ourselves. So no, I'll Tyson Williams over both of those guys. Even if someone wanted to send me both of them for Tyson Williams, no sir.
Right. In the early season, the second most traded guy was Myles Gaskin, 9 rushes for 49 yards, 5 receptions for 27. He finishes RB 28. Yates, what are your thoughts on Gaskin here? Is this an opportunity here? Because they did face the Patriots in that first matchup.
Right.
And looking forward to this week's games, too. They're going to have Buffalo, which is also tough. But after that, Las Vegas, eventually Jacksonville. You're going to get Atlanta in there, Houston in there. So there are some matchups in the next 6 to 8 weeks or so that are useful. Is this an opportunity to be buying or selling Myles Gaskin?
I'm going to go after Myles Gaskin, especially when you look at some of the running back position in fantasy as it is right now. Like, it's getting thin. So if I can soak up some of these low-end running back twos, and I'm encouraged from Myles Gaskin. He saw the majority of the carries on the ground. I think Malcolm Brown was second with like 5, and he did next to nothing with his opportunity. But the way that Myles Gaskin was going to be valuable for fantasy football was with his receiving workload, and we saw that here. I said on the Friday show with Dan, I said 6 targets here is incoming for Myles Gaskin. He got 5, and I think that he is going to see around that same workload here as we move forward. So Myles Gaskin, especially in full PPR formats, yeah, I'm looking to go acquire him.
Ooh, can I ask?
You may.
Tyson Williams or Myles Gaskin?
Ooh.
Who would you have?
That's interesting because, and that was one that I was thinking about with Tyson. When we were talking about Tyson Williams, I was literally like Myles Gaskin, and then I saw that Joe had him on the show sheet right up here. So I figured we were going to talk about it. I would probably be looking to acquire Myles Gaskin over Tyson Williams.
Yeah,
3 for 3. All right, so all 3 of us. So how about you, Welsh? Would you be buying or selling Myles Gaskin right now in week 2?
Yeah, I'm interested in the buy because it was just like relatively not exciting of a week. And I didn't ever really crazy buy into the whole, 3 workload thing. I think Myles Gaskin is who I thought he was preseason. I still think he's that same guy. So if somebody has soured, if somebody had him as like a, I don't know, mid to low RB2, they were just like, hey, this is going to be the guy, and they don't see him as like a mid flex guy, then sure, if I could buy on it, I would absolutely look at that. If I could trade, if I had depth at wide receiver, or, honestly, like we just said, a Tyson Williams, if you have there's another thing to think about. If you have a high waiver claim and you have an opportunity to get a guy like Eli Mitchell, who I know we'll be talking about, if you have an opportunity to do that, and let's say you also were the lucky dude to have Tyson Williams, you have that ability to move a guy like him, and I would buy low on guys like Gaskin if it were out there. But I'm not crazy on Gaskin, like, trade-wise, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be trying to move to get him. It's got to be a true buy low.
Yeah, I would be buying low if I could, or even buy medium, the way RB2s are dropping like flies. Here's a couple of names here. Myles Gaskin or Javonte Williams. Which side of this trade, Welsh?
Ooh, Javonte Williams. I'm still a Javonte Williams guy. He actually outsnapped Melvin Gordon this week. Melvin Gordon, to me, actually is a sell, to be honest with you. Javonte Williams is definitely the guy I would take in this one.
It was fun to watch Melvin Gordon barely make it to the end zone there. He kind of ran out of gas. He had that burst, and then after that, he was just like chugging along
top
there.
Speed,
but
fastest high-end speed. But if you take that 70-yarder away, I think he was averaging barely over 3 yards a carry before that. But yeah, give me Javonte Williams still.
All right, Yates, you want the talent and upside of Javonte Williams or the kind of steady lower-end Myles Gaskin?
This comes down to the state of my team currently.
That's fair.
Great point.
If I need the long-term play, right, if I can have Javonte Williams as like an RB3, RB4 on my roster where I don't have to start him, then I will take that side. But if I need a starter at running back position right now as an RB2, then I will take Myles Gaskin.
All right, how about Myles Gaskin or Chase Edmonds, Yates? These guys are pretty close in most rankings.
They are. This is actually pretty close for me. Chase Edmonds, I think I was impressed with what I saw. He got a lot more work in this last game than I anticipated that he would. I don't know what he's going to be season long, though. So I think I will go Myles Gaskin still here. Again, it's the New England Patriots defense. Like, this is a very, very good defense. I wasn't expecting a ton on the ground here for Gaskin. So let's give it one more week before I kind of panic and move him off for someone like Chase Edmonds, who I had further down in my pre-draft rankings.
Welsh, how about you? Edmonds or Gaskin?
That one's super, super close. I wasn't in love with the running back share that James Conner had in this. I think he had 16 carries, but Edmonds is multifaceted. I guess, I want to say Javonte Williams because I think when we get to the back half of the year, I do think he's a little bit more valuable. But if I do take that team context into play, I think it's close enough that Chase Edmonds is going to be more valuable early on. And if you take James Conner breaking down, which is his favorite thing to do, is break down in a season and miss games, that would leave Chase Edmonds, to really, really run, unless they wanted to start incorporating like guys like Eno and stuff. I'm going to just slightly take Chase Edmonds in here, but using the circumstantial stuff here, if I could have Javonte Williams more as a backup, then I would give him the slight edge because I think he outscores on the back half of the year.
That was going to be my next question, actually, is who scores the most touchdowns between those two guys, Gaskin or Edmonds? This is a tough one when you think about it. Like, if I set the number, like, let's say the number's at 6, like, do you think that both guys can go over 6 touchdowns? I worry about Edmonds with 6 total? 6 total even for the year, I feel, or at least on the rushing side with Edmonds, because my concern with Edmonds is what you saw from Connor and obviously what you always see from Kyler Murray, which we were told we weren't going to see anymore, which is a big load of crap, which obviously in week 1 we saw it again. Of course we did. So what were your thoughts there in terms of touchdown upsides? Yeah, I think Gaskin has more touchdown upsides, so I tend to lean that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really good point, because as far as a goal line back, James Conner, Chase Edmonds is probably third option as a goal line back behind Kyler Murray, and then James Conner to do that. So he's a little limited there. It's such a pass-heavy
offense. Or any
offense,
Rondell Moore gadget play they can come up with.
Yeah, well, you got gadget plays, but you've also, you're going to have Chase Edmonds involved. I think Chase Edmonds is going to have more receiving touchdowns than he is rushing touchdowns. I'm just not sure they are that far off, but one thing I do firmly believe is that when they are in the red zone, Gaskin is the option with the Dolphins. I'm just not sure how efficient and how much that is compared to what Arizona is going to be this year. So that's why I think they're close, but it's a great point, and that's why I think this one is like neck and neck close.
All right. Yates, what's your concept for touchdowns for Chase Edmonds this year in terms of your projections?
It's super interesting. Like he talked with what Welsh was talking about with, like, Arizona's probably going to be in the red zone a lot more. Right, and but Chase Edmonds probably not going to be that involved as a rusher. He's going to have to get it done as a receiver. But Myles Gaskin, I think, is going to be the main guy for Miami, but they might not be in the red zone as frequently as Arizona. So it kind of cancels out. So that's why this is super close. So I will still go with Gaskin here. I think that he ends up with more total touchdowns at the end of the year than Chase Edmonds, but super, super close.
Yeah, that's close. That's a
let's
good one.
go to number 3 on the board this week, and it's DeAndre Swift. So, look, Yates, you know that I've had massive concerns about Swift in terms of his value. It got suppressed as draft season went on, but it did kind of marginalize a little bit to where it became a reasonable investment. But here we are being traded quite a bit already. He's the number 3 guy on the board. You want to be trading for, or do you want to be trading away DeAndre Swift?
It depends. I mean, in a vacuum, I want to trade away DeAndre Swift if I can get one of those top tier options. But it's all in context about who you're going to be targeting him for. So I think, if you can sell off DeAndre Swift right now for one of those top tier options that didn't have a fantastic week, then you do that.
All right, let's see if I can tempt you. Would you take the swap of DeAndre Swift for James Robinson?
I don't want any piece of James Robinson right now, man.
What do you mean? You wanted all the James Robinson 7 days ago. You love the James Robinson.
Do you see what Urban Meyer did?
He got Urban Meyer, Joe.
He got Urban Meyer.
I'm aware, but I just don't know if we want to all just go crazy on week 1. And how did that game go for them, by the way?
Right, no, and we can say here, all logic points to, hey, you give James Robinson the majority of the carries over Carlos Hyde, but Urban Meyer apparently just doesn't have logic. James Robinson, no, I am not. That's a crazy selling high for a buying low player. I mean, James Robinson, no, I'm not trading DeAndre Swift for him.
My goodness. All right, how about you there, Welsh? Would you want James Robinson for DeAndre Swift?
Preseason, I mean, slap it, make it happen. Absolutely. Now, no, I'm worried, and I hate doing the week 1 freak out. I don't want to be that person, but 5 carries. James Robinson also, if you watch any of that game, that dude looked defeated. He had a couple drops. He just had a bad lazy. He seemed not like he was lazy, but he just seemed defeated in how much run he was getting. Horrible drops. Urban Meyer doesn't seem to trust him. That could change. Probably will change, and James Robinson will level out to some degree. But I'm legit worried about James Robinson. No, I would take Swift here, because the one thing I agree, if you can trade off Swift right now for, one of those more solid middle tier running backs, I would do it. One thing we do know, though, is the Lions are going to be an efficient 2 running back system. It's just, where does the upside go? They're probably, capped at flex to low RB2s or high RB2s, however you want to look at it, where I just don't know where I think James Robinson can put up mid RB2s, and he can put up duds like we just saw. So no, I would take Swift.
All right, how about this one? How about Damien Harris, who had 20 plus carries, had 100 yards, and a lot of guys had 100 yards rushing. I know he put the ball on the ground. I know that's a problem. I know we're all going to be talking about that all week, and people are worried going in against the Jets. How much is that going to affect him? Is Bill Belichick going to freak out, and you're not going to see him on the field as much? Welsh, Damien Harris, or DeAndre Swift?
This might surprise you. I'm doing that. I am big on Damien Harris after this week. I don't like the fumble, and I'm a big Ramondre Stevenson guy.
So am I.
But Damien Harris looked good, looked leaner, hit his cuts, and they gave him all the carries. I think he was third in touches this week.
He is very high up there.
Yeah, he was top five. I know that.
Last year, when they gave him 20 carries, this is what Damien Harris looked like most of the time.
Yeah, he was top 5 in touches. I know that. He got a bunch of carries. He looked great. Not only it wasn't just a volume thing, because every time we talk about Mike Davis, we're like, hey, volume. But like Damien Harris looked good. That fumble was stupid, but guess what he's lucky with? Ramondre Stevenson, as stupid. He just fumbled right off the top. JJ Taylor's not going to take any away. James White's back to his old role. Damien Harris was targeted in the pass game. Caught a couple passes.
2 receptions
Damien
there.
Harris, yes, I would do that. And I don't do it feeling fantastic because you're giving, like, what you've traded off in DeAndre Swift for Damien Harris is a big jump. But I was really, really impressed. And he was one of my biggest risers this week, Damien Harris.
How about for you, Yates? Is it close?
Welsh talked about like the pre-draft opinions versus now and not wanting to like overreact to week 1. So I'm still at that point where it's like, okay, I want to take what happened in week 1 and take it with a grain of salt. And that's why with James Robinson and DeAndre Swift, they were close. I think they were back-to-back in my pre-draft rankings. I think I had them at like 18 and 19 respectively. Yeah. So like with that, when DeAndre Swift has a massive game, I'm not jumping a tier to sell off DeAndre Swift for James Robinson, who had a bad game, right? They were in the same tier. So that's why I'm not making that trade. With Damien Harris, I had him a tier below DeAndre Swift. Am I encouraged from what I saw with Damien Harris? Absolutely. He was incredible. But with DeAndre Swift, I'm not going to make that move because DeAndre Swift kind of edged up my rest of season rankings. DeAndre Swift did as well. So I've still got Swift ahead of Harris in my rest of season rankings, but I am encouraged by what I saw from Damien Harris. He's always been a fantastic running back.
Right.
Just been a matter of the volume and the scoring opportunity. So if we have those kind of concerns put to ease, then yeah, Damien Harris.
And you might be able to get a little on top of a trade too if you're trading DeAndre Swift. Because part of my thing, it's not just about like DeAndre Swift looked pretty good, but like why I would bring him down even just a little notch is how good I thought Jamaal Williams was and how much that they wanted to rely on him. You're right. From a value perspective, it doesn't make sense just trading Swift for Damien Harris after week 1 and having those type of reactions. But hopefully listeners are savvy enough to know that you may also be able to swing another little wide receiver. So maybe someone doesn't believe in a Corey Davis, or there's some other guys. If you're playing in deeper leagues, you may be able to swing. I mean, you're probably not getting Corey Davis, but you might be able to swing some lower end wide receivers to add on top of the deal. But I mean, you are right about that. A 1-to-1 is tough on it, but I'm on Damien Harris, Joe, and I think you are too.
Well, I have been, and I loved him as an RB4. Got a lot of shares of him there. When it started to creep to RB3, it was a little bit more of a decision-making process, but I got enough. But I love him this week too, especially against the Jets. I think those scoring opportunities are going to be a little bit more bountiful than they were against that Miami defense. I've got a trade that Yates is going to accept in a second. Darrell Henderson for DeAndre Swift. Yates?
So it's funny. Last year, Dan Harris
wait a minute. Not just yes, of course.
Hold on.
We're at the instant.
Okay.
So Dan Harris and I all last year would talk about, like, if we would get questions of, should I trade this wide receiver for this wide receiver or this running back for this running back?
Right.
And they were in the same tier. And Dan and I, every single episode that we got those questions was just like, why would you make that trade? Like, they're in the same tier. So it's not making a massive jump. You're not buying low on a player. You're not selling high. Really? Like, so Darrell Henderson and DeAndre Swift, they're in the same tier for me. Pre-draft rankings was RB17 for Henderson, RB19 for Swift. Am I really encouraged from what I saw with Darrell Henderson? Yes. Is he a good running back? Yes. Is he going to have scoring opportunities? Yes. But I think they're in the same tier. So I'm not going out there and saying like, oh man, can I make this trade work? Because they're in the same tier for me.
I am, because those offenses are not in the same tier. That Rams offense, I think, is going to be special with Matthew Stafford. That means more opportunities for Darrell Henderson. And I'm going to put my faith in Matthew Stafford over Jared Goff. That's where I'm going. How about you, Welsh? Darrell Henderson for DeAndre Swift. Which side of that deal you want to be on?
Yeah, it's a tough. I think Kyle said it really well.
He did.
I would throw that
Don't compliment
into, like,
him too much, though.
I'm just saying, like, I would throw that into my same discussion, my kind of instant reaction to Damien Harris. Like, I kind of think these guys are all in this same tier. So why you jump and make quick decisions? I'm with you on holding back. Push comes to shove, though, Joe, I do kind of agree with you. Darrell Henderson got the big workload. We know Sony Michel is going to get more involved, but the comfort level, Henderson looked good, and boy, that Rams offense looks really, really good. So I think it can go either way, but I will. So I guess for the purpose of the game, I will say, yeah, I will do that for Darrell Henderson. But Kyle made a great point that should be capped on all of this is we are looking at tiers of guys that I think, I don't know if Kyle agrees that Damien Harris has moved into the same tier, that I think these guys are all in the same tier. So it's not like you're getting a smoking deal trading for or away any of these guys we just talked about.
No, but although they're in the same tier, the offenses might not be. And I think that's what the tiebreaker is, and I think that's the best way to look at it. Oh, go ahead, Yale.
Can we agree that all of the backs we just talked about, is James Robinson at the bottom of this tier of all those guys?
So that's what I was literally just about to ask, was like the purposes of this argument would be better suited if we would say, like, rather than in that same tier of Darrell Henderson or DeAndre Swift, Jamaal Williams or James Robinson. Like, what side of that are we taking, right? Where Jamaal Williams we had buried in pre-draft rankings. I know Joe liked him, but he was still relatively low.
Sure. He was an
RB3, right?
Yeah, RB4.
RB3 or RB4.
Most of the time, RB4.
And then James Robinson, we had all the way up in, as a mid-range RB2. So after week 1, are we making that deal? What's our level of confidence in James Robinson? That's, I think, more of the conversation.
I think the conversation then becomes, what's your level of confidence for Urban Meyer to go back and watch film and realize, okay, we've got to make an adjustment in our approach here.
Little to zero.
I think that's a really good point, though.
Great.
That's an argument I think that is so difficult to make after week 1. Like, Joe, you're not as much. Kyle and I were both legitimately worried about James Robinson. I'm not worried about his skill set, though. I am worried. Like, I didn't watch the whole game, but I got multiple points, especially third and fourth quarter, where it was just dumb stuff by James Robinson. Lawrence just throwing at his feet. He dropped passes. Like, I don't want that to get in his head, but we aren't counting in, like, we're not saying like there's a talent loss here. We're just saying like Urban Meyer might really not be good, and can he make the adjustments you hope it is? So the upside is on James Robinson in that argument of Jamaal Williams, honestly, might be safer. I think if you level out the field by the end of the year, Jamaal Williams might have done better for you by not falling out of flex or RB2 territory
Less
the whole
ceiling,
year.
but a more consistent floor.
Where James Robinson, I'll bet you will outscore heavily, maybe even double points multiple times Jamaal Williams, but he might disappear. He might completely disappear on weeks, and that's what makes the discussion so tough.
The consistency, right.
So I might actually just give Jamaal Robinson, James Robinson, I just confused them all.
You made them one person. You made them a celebrity couple.
Jamaal, Damien Harris, Robinson. I'll give James Robinson like the slight edge because of that upside. So maybe Jamaal Williams is at the bottom of the tier, but boy, are they all in the same area. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, it's that same thing for me. I think that's a really, really close trade. I think that, you definitely can make that trade in your league right now. You can absolutely make that trade to go from Jamaal Williams to James Robinson. I might lean into the talent there a little bit more with James Robinson, but I mean by the narrowest of margins.
I don't know if this qualifies as disappearing as well, but 15 rushes, 49 yards, 3 receptions, 23 receiving yards. He finished as RB32. He's Mike Davis of the Atlanta Falcons. Clearly, the Falcons' offense did not look good in that first contest. So I'm just going to put this one out here for you. Yates, do you want to be buying low right now on Mike Davis, or do you want to try to be getting out while the draft capital is still relative?
Watching the game, there were several moments where I was like, Mike Davis actually looks pretty good. And then you look at the final stat line and you're just like, oh, no. With Davis, I think you've got Wayne Gallman that's going to be coming in. Like, they scratched Wayne Gallman for this one. And so it was Cordell Patterson and it was Mike Davis. So once you have Gallman, who I'm sure is going to be active in week 2, you can't go into your active day roster with only one starting running back and then Cordell Patterson for whoever he is. So I think you can't do that. You got to have Wayne Gallman active on the roster. So he's going to see some work, and it could take away from Mike Davis. With this offense just looking absolutely terrible in week 1, and I don't think that's going to get even any better here in week 2 up against Tampa Bay. This might be your last chance to sell, quote-unquote, high on Mike Davis. I don't know what you're going to be able to get for him, though.
Conversely, though, it might just be the beginning of the buy low. I think I wait one more week after this Tampa game, and then I attack on the Mike Davis side.
There's two sides of that. It's, are you selling now, which I think you probably should.
Yes.
And then if you're going to buy Mike Davis, you wait a week.
One more week, right, Welsh? Don't you think that's the pattern?
Yeah, but Kyle, you made a good point. He's like, you probably should, but you said it earlier. What are you going to get? Like, I think Mike Davis, he didn't have the juice in the first place. He doesn't have the name value where, like, James Robinson has a name value where we're like, oh, we can still hold on to that. Mike Davis doesn't have that. Most of us never wanted to believe in any of it.
For Mike Davis, well.
Oh, that's such a good one.
See what I did there? This is why I get the
what?
Bucks.
I would take Tyson Williams on there because I feel like Atlanta tipped their hand. I mean, and I can hear Bogman in my ear right now just screaming at me because he loved Mike Davis. But I feel like Atlanta also tipped their hand on a couple things. Look how much Patterson was involved. You bring Wayne Gallman in, guess what's not going to happen? Patterson's not going to go away. This team, not good. they're going to be playing from behind a lot. And guess what they're going to want? More Patterson in there on those passing downs where they can put him in at running back. So I'm just not sure what the share is going to look like. Our big argument was, it's volume with Mike Davis. I'm just not sure the volume's going to be there, especially if they're going to be playing behind. He's not the only guy. Gallman will get some run. They use Patterson significantly in that. And I think we're now looking at Mike Davis and Tyson Williams in a same tier. And I have my worries about Baltimore. I guess I would probably take I would take the upside on Tyson Williams. But I do think you might have said it. The play might be hold on and see what next week looks like, because maybe Gallman's still not fully involved, and maybe they try to establish a run and he can build back up his trade value. But I would be looking to trade Mike Davis when he does it. Don't fool yourself. Don't do Bogman thing. And then he gets really good and you're just like, hey, look, I'm right. Nope. Get out while you can. But this was not the week to do it.
All right, one last question before we start talking about the buys and sells of the week that we're looking for, the buy lows and the sell highs. And also stick around, because when we're done with that, we're going to talk about the guys who have moved up and down our rankings this week after what we saw in week 1. If you should get Mitchell off the waiver wire, let's say you get Elijah Mitchell and you get him on your team, is there an opportunity here to sell him? I put out a little Twitter poll, and I wanted to know what the people think. I'm a man of the people. This is the people's podcast, after all. So I asked everybody, what's the fantasy answer in the 49er backfield? Is it Mitchell? Is it Sermon? Or is it a complete cluster? 23% said Mitchell, 24% said Sermon, and of course 52% said cluster. So Welsh, I'm going to put this to you, and we got a lot more 49ers to talk about here. If you picked up Elijah Mitchell, would you immediately try to flip him for, say, Jamaal Williams?
No, absolutely not.
What do you think you could get for Elijah Mitchell, let's say, from somebody who had Mostert? Like, how far do you want to flip this asset, because it might just be a cluster, I guess is the question.
Here's a couple things. Eli Mitchell looked great. Like, that was one of the biggest takeaways.
But it was the Lions too. Let's all be fair.
Sure, it was the Lions, but if you go back and watch, he was breaking through small gaps. He was hitting his holes. He showed burst. Everything he did just broke my heart for Mostert, because that's what Mostert would have done exponentially.
Yeah.
He would have Mostert would have ran for 150
100%.
plus in that game. Guaranteed. I
Do you hear what you
guarantee
just said, Joe?
Yeah.
150. That was the line that I said all last week on the podcast.
You're not-
It was
and
like
you're not
150
wrong.
yards minimum.
I saw
That was
somebody-
the exact yep.
Guys, I saw somebody
it's
on
not even a
Twitter
question. So
on our
sorry,
Fantasy Pros account. They ask, what'd you regret in week 1? And everyone's like, starting Mostert. And I said, I replied to a couple, and I said, you can't regret starting Mostert.
No.
It was absolutely the right play. And this is from the guy who's been telling you all the time, don't draft this guy. He would have been a top 10. I don't even know where I had to go back and look at week 1 where I had him. It was a phenomenal option. You can't second guess that. Guys get hurt. Right. Things happen sometimes.
The third running back went for 100 plus, guaranteed 150.
Right.
Listen, I got burned. I had him in DFS. I had props on him. I got burned on Sunday. It sucked, but you know what? Eli Mitchell looked great. And Trey Sermon, inactive. He'll get back going, and I wouldn't even be shocked if he was the starter. But the whole cluster thing is what's odd to me, because people are like, it's just a cluster. But it's not a cluster you don't mess with. It is one that you do mess with. Yes, Jeff Wilson will come back at some point, and Mostert will come back at some point, and it's going to open up a little bit. But this is the time where there's going to be a separator, and Eli Mitchell looked fantastic. He made the right moves. He's got some good matchups coming up, and I thought he looked like a complete back, which was so impressive. Now, they didn't throw him the ball, which I'd like to see if he gets involved in that, because I think that could hurt him. So, coming back to it, I would not be looking to trade Eli Mitchell right now, because I don't think he's built that up a little bit. Give him a week or two. Get the Trey Sermon talk off of here and let Eli Mitchell thrive.
Yes, well,
then you're talking about high RB2. You're talking about like top 15 back with what he'll do in the San Francisco system, especially if Sermon plays, is active, and gets like 8 carries and Eli Mitchell still gets 15 plus. I'm still on Eli Mitchell because of also just how impressed he looked, not just the stat line.
But Yates, you also run the risk of Trey Sermon getting back into this conversation, which I guess is the point we have to really consider. So is Eli Mitchell more valuable as a trade chip than he is as a roster asset?
Yeah, that's the two sides of it. Is one, what do you buy into? Do you believe that Elijah Mitchell is going to be fantasy relevant? Yes, because this is the San Francisco 49ers backfield has had moments where multiple running backs have been viable for fantasy football. So is Elijah Mitchell going to be fantasy relevant? Yes. Now it just comes down to what is your perception and what do you believe, what's the level of relevance for Elijah Mitchell. So if you can find someone, here's my opinion. If you can find someone who is going to buy into that Elijah Mitchell is the lead guy in this backfield, no questions asked, he's going to be dominant, and he's going to get 19 carries per game moving forward, and he's going to go over 100 yards, whatever. If you find someone who is an absolute believer in your league and will ship him off for a Myles Gaskin, for a Tyson Williams, in my opinion, for, Chase Edmonds even, like one of these guys, you do that in a heartbeat, in my opinion. Like, you do that. However, I'm not just going to acquire Elijah Mitchell for a significant portion of fab and then just ship him off for anyone, right? Like, that's the difference here. So if you can find peak value in your league for Elijah Mitchell and you can flip him for a top 24 pre-draft running back, then I do that.
All right,
and I don't think, I just don't think that's the thing that's going to happen. I'd be curious to see people's trades on him. I think that's the problem. I think you're dealing in a world more where Eli Mitchell is being traded for wideouts, and that is why I could be more prone, because if you get teams willing to move low-end wide receiver 2s for Eli Mitchell, then we're starting to cook. I don't think anybody's looking to acquire Mitchell for Gaskin, for James Robinson. I don't think there's running back 1-for-1s. I think Eli Mitchell is involved in a team that is hurt. They lost Mostert. Now they have to trade from depth to get that running back.
Trying to get a Jalen Waddle if you're the Jerry Jeudy team.
And
or something
that's
like that.
why I would be more prone to trade him now after I say all of that, because I think that's what you're cooking with. And there's still a lot of question marks with San Francisco. The cluster, as it is kind of the issue. But it's not that they won't be effective. And remember, there's no Mostert or Jeffrey Wilson for probably at least 5 more weeks. Well, Wilson might be back in like 5 or 6 weeks, but you've got 5 weeks to go after Sermon was inactive and Eli Mitchell proved himself. So, and 2 running backs can live in San Francisco. So Mitchell can be at least a flex for the next 5 weeks, which holds his value. So that's why just be careful with all the trades.
All right, let's move on to the buy low targets of the week. And Yates, I promised you we would do this, and I saw your tweet about it. Ezekiel Elliott, let's go. You tweeted about, hey, what are you seeing out there? You guys out there in the leagues playing your fantasy football, what are you seeing there in terms of Ezekiel Elliott trades? So you did the digging. What did you come up with? What have you found? What sort of packages are out there for Ezekiel Elliott? I saw someone trade
this is gonna be good.
Austin Eckler for Ezekiel Elliott. You want to tell me who wins that deal?
That would be Ezekiel Elliott's side.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this, like, people are completely panicking. And the reason why I did this is because I put out a tweet 4 days before the season opener. I was like, put this in your back pocket right now. Go trade for Ezekiel Elliott in your leagues in week 1. And people just came at me with pitchforks. We're just like, no one's going to trade a first-round pick. Yes, they are. After week 1, we have a very wide audience of listeners here, so it might not happen in your league where every single person listens to a fantasy football podcast and listens to the Fantasy Pros football podcast, is dedicated. In your casual leagues, Ezekiel Elliott is being traded because there is the concern of what version of Zeke that we saw last year. Is that the same thing that we saw here this year heading into week 1? He went up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense. He looked good. I'm not concerned whatsoever. So Zeke, for Austin Eckler, like, yeah, I'm taking the Zeke side of that.
Well, you said a really interesting thing. I'm sorry, Joe.
No, it's okay. I was just curious. What kind of players would you want to put together for Ezekiel Elliott package, like in your head? Like, what gets it done for you?
Most things. Most things. The thing I wanted to point out, because you made a really interesting point that we should carry over why this is, which is hilarious that people would pitchfork you about. Elliott carried over garbage last year to this year. That is such a big point for people in evaluating.
Oh, absolutely.
Because remember, it was, with Dak, he was garbage last year, and Pollard was taking over, and then you had another one of those. That is going to get people being
had it with Dak this time,
now,
but it was
you're
against
hilarious.
Tampa.
You're hilarious if you took your 6th pick with Elliott, and now you're willing to trade him off for a back end of the first round. You're hilarious.
You're a clown, bro.
I would, most things. I think in a situation like that, I would love to do a 2-for-1 because maybe I can trade from depth. Maybe I could trade I was about to, who keeps coming to my mind, like a Jamar Chase and a low-end running back. Maybe you could trade. Would you trade Jamar Chase and Tyson Williams, depth?
I don't think that gets it done.
Well, it doesn't, but I'm saying,
I think David Montgomery and Jamar Chase gets it done. off that David Montgomery performance.
Boy,
against
I
a
like
very
David
good-
Montgomery a
I know
lot.
David Montgomery looked real good.
Oh, wait a
wanna
minute.
do
I'm
that
sorry.
trade.
What was that? Joe, David Montgomery is much better than everyone gave him credit for in the offseason? Well, thanks, guys. It's so nice to hear that. That's tremendous. Yes, he did look very good, Yates. You're correct.
He looked great. I mean, some of these trades that came through, like someone posted James Robinson and Jacoby Myers for Ezekiel Elliott happened in their league.
Done.
Like, it happens. It happens. So
Okay.
let's bring it back to like this conversation is like buy low on Ezekiel Elliott. Go out and just see what the interest level is for someone in your league on Ezekiel Elliott who drafted them, because they might not have done so, with full confidence, and week one might have scared him off.
All right, let's move to another player here. Welsh, we'll start with you because it's a 49er. Brandin Aiyuk. This seems like a player with a lot of talent. I understand it was all the Deebo game. We'll get to Deebo in a second. In fact, let's loop these guys in there because Deebo is actually the sell high candidate that I threw out there this week at wide receiver.
Really?
So curious. I mean, look, 189, right? Whatever it was.
I know.
I'm just saying, like, that's a lot. And there was a moment there where, a ball got thrown to Deebo Samuel and all the guys in Detroit look around each other and then he just ran for 40 yards. So here, let's just ask this question. Is it time to do either one of those two things? Do you want to buy low on Brandin Aiyuk, and are you considering selling on Deebo Samuel? Give me both of those guys your reaction and why.
So I do want to give a caveat to, like, I think this is very circumstantial on both sides. I'm obviously going to be a little bit biased, not just because I'm a Niner fan, but I came on here and I literally, my favorite bold prediction was about Deebo. It was about Deebo in here that I thought he'd be a wide receiver too, because guess what? Jimmy Garoppolo loves Deebo Samuel. That's what I've been saying. Deebo is a fantastic route runner. He's always going to get targets. And he's the most targeted player, and I don't think it's going to stop. And guess what? They did this last year. The 49ers did this last year. Even doing it this time with Kittle. So last year it was, what was it? The Richie James game, the Brandin Aiyuk game. They continue to do this, and they're doing it again, even with Kittle back in the offense. Here's my worry when Garoppolo's gone and what Trey Lance does.
Right.
Trey Lance is going to move the ball big, and Brandin Aiyuk is that guy. So I don't think I'm willing to do both sides of it, but the least aggressive I would be is on buying low on Brandin Aiyuk. There's a lot of stuff in there. You've already got two pass catchers ahead of him, and I thought Deebo was above Aiyuk before the season. There's some personal stuff that obviously Aiyuk can get past. He's in a little bit of a doghouse. He was out-snapped by Sherfield, and Trey Lance seems to like Sherfield, so don't forget that. Mohamed Sanu is in there, which sounds ridiculous, but he is. I don't think I would be at all aggressive buying low on Brandin Aiyuk. It would take a very low offer for me to consider it. Where Deebo, it would take a very high offer for me to sell high. So I am more likely to, I guess, which side? I guess
think you're more likely to. I assume
I'm more likely to sell Deebo if it's high than I am to buy Brandin Aiyuk at what probably the perceivable cost is going to be. Because I think a lot of people are just going to shoot
I'll
this
throw
up.
out a name for you. Would you rather have Brandon Cooks or Brandin Aiyuk?
Dang.
Tell you, this is what I do, baby.
That's a really, really tough one. I probably, man.
I think I'd rather have Aiyuk, and I
would be tempted on the upside of Aiyuk. I would. That one would get me. I think that's close though, because Brandon Cooks is going to continue getting run, but Aiyuk's upside, I'd still kind of sit there. Especially, I mean, I'm hedging my bet. Back half of the year, if Trey Lance is there, I think Aiyuk is going to definitely be a guy, and it's going to hurt Deebo a little bit. But yeah, I would go Aiyuk in that one.
Yates, how do you see these two 49er wide receivers? Are you trying to buy on Aiyuk? Are you trying to sell Deebo?
It's the same thing that Welsh said. Like, it would take an extremely low offer for me to go after Aiyuk right now. Like, my level of confidence in him and his playing time and what he's going to, like, all the talent in the world. And I was super excited for what he could be. But right now, it's just a confidence level with him. And I can't get to making that offer. So, like, Brandon Cooks, I'm going to take Brandon Cooks. I'm going to take Brandon Cooks right now, especially because where you drafted Brandon Aiyuk, you drafted him as a potential, like, low-end wide receiver 2. He is potentially a wide receiver 2 for your fantasy lineup, and you need to replace that right now to be able to continue to string together some wins. So Brandon Cooks can absolutely do that for you. I don't know if Brandon Aiyuk is... Aiyuk's more the long-term play, but I just don't know if you can survive that right now.
You know, an interesting take on this, too, is it actually might be more cost efficient. Now, I could be wrong about this. I feel like it would be more cost efficient to buy on Deebo, even after the big game, based on his perceived value, than it would to be to buy low on Aiyuk because of the cost. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
No,
like,
it does.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody was like me with Deebo. Like, people drafted him as a wide receiver 3, maybe a 4, and they might be like, hey, had a really good game, blah, blah, blah. But it might still be more cost efficient to get him than it would someone to actually sell Aiyuk at a really cheap. I mean, we're talking like a really cheap price that we would want to get in. So I'm probably more of a buyer on Deebo's big game because I think that's not going to stop. He's a fantastic route runner, made a dumb play at the end of the game, which pissed me off. But I think he's going to continue getting the run. Jimmy wins games. He stays in. That means Deebo gets targets.
Melvin Gordon coming off an RB6 finish in half PPR. 101 rushing yards on 11 rush attempts. He also had a touchdown. We know that. 3 catches for 17. Yates, is this your chance to sell high on Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, I mean, you drafted Melvin Gordon as a potential RB4 for your roster. So depending on what depending on what happened with injuries above on your fantasy football roster right now, you probably don't need Melvin Gordon. So now I will say this: he's going up against Jacksonville this week, so I might want to hold on to Melvin Gordon one more
Build
week
it up
and
one
then
more time.
completely sell high. Because Melvin Gordon I think and Javonte Williams are both in line for a really good game here. Up against Jacksonville. So yeah, if you can flip him for, one of these other guys that's a tier above, right now at fantasypros.com/trade, you can do most popular searches right now. So you can see who people are starting to search for to see what the advice on trades, and like some popular searches right now, Melvin Gordon or Ezekiel Elliott. That's a real trade that people are searching for right now. Like you can maybe make that work.
I know
Melvin Gordon or
marijuana is
Damien
now
Harris.
legal in a lot of states, so that's
Melvin
also
Gordon or
part of that.
DeAndre Swift. Like, these are searches that people are legitimately searching for right now. And yeah, I'm gonna try to make that tier jump to go up from Melvin Gordon to one of these other guys.
I would also recommend looking the other direction too. Maybe you can actually get some bodies on a roster too. Maybe you can get a Tyson Williams. And I don't know, like a lower end. Maybe you could steal a Darnell Mooney away, or you could steal somebody, or Michael Pittman, who was disappointing in the first week, or something like that. You might be able to pull off a deal like that for Melvin Gordon, don't you think? There, Welsh.
I actually like that Michael Pittman one too, because that was a really disappointing one. I'm a huge sell. I don't need to go too deep into it. I'm a sell on Melvin Gordon. Like I said, it was barely over 3 yards per carry without the big breakaway. Was fantastic. Ran super fast, but I like Javonte Williams. I am jumping on the opportunity to sell Melvin Gordon if I can.
All right, it's time for the lightning round, and we'll try to get a couple questions in as well. Let's talk about rest of season rankers, the ones that are flying up the board, the ones that are not flying up anywhere but going down instead. Yates, who is the running back in your rankings that you bumped up after week 1 in your rankings for the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's Jamaal Williams. He was someone that I did have in that low-end RB3, maybe even high-end RB4 territory. But now if we're going to see that the target share is completely going to the running backs and tight ends in this Detroit Lions offense, then that means that Jamaal Williams is going to be relevant each week, whereas in my pre-draft rankings, he was not. So Jamaal Williams rising up rankings for sure.
All right, Welsh, who's the running back rising up your ranking board now?
I talked about him, Damien Harris. I mean, Damien Harris, he looked so good, and he was like maybe probably flex draftable in the 30s or something like that. And I think with everything has shook out, I think he's put himself into an RB2 category, and it's probably for the rest of the year. I don't think Ramondre is pushing him too hard. There's no other back there that's going to take that away. Patriots look not bad, even though they got the loss. You got to be pretty happy about where it's heading. So Damien Harris is one of those guys that took probably the biggest move.
For me, it's Miles Sanders. I was a little lukewarm on him. I liked what I saw. Thought this Eagles offense looked good. Hopefully they can kind of carry that momentum over to the next weeks ahead. Let's talk about the guys who are falling in the rankings at the running back position. For me, it's Michael Carter. That Mekhi Becton injury does not help things, nor do I think this matchup coming up here. And this is what I kept warning everybody about. Although you might like Zach Wilson in preseason, let's not forget the schedule he's got ahead of him. Who is moving down your rankings at running back, Welsh?
Mine, I feel bad you went to me first because Kyle has him on here as well. But I just had to agree because it's the most dominant. James Robinson. It's just like Urban Meyer terrifies me. I made a big move adjustment on him. Bogman and I took him in flex for Sealy stuff, but I'm worried. I'm really worried that Urban Meyer is the problem of this. I'm counting on the talent, but I mean, we've laid it out here. He has most significantly moved down more than anybody.
Yates, same for you, huh?
Yeah, yep, it's James Robinson. He went from 18, I believe, in my pre-draft rankings to 26 in my rest of season rankings for running backs. So, yeah, I'm super concerned. And it's not because of James Robinson. It's because of Urban Meyer and the fact that he gave Carlos Hyde, 9 carries in this one to James Robinson's 5. Like, my 3-year-old son could say that's a bad idea.
Well, your 3-year-old son's actually very good at football.
Very bright. Very bright.
He's a very bright kid. All right, let's talk about the wide receivers, the ones that are rising up the ranks. I already had this guy pretty high, but I moved him way up, and I'm going to overreact to week 1. I'm going to do it. Antonio Brown, let's go. AB looked so good in that game, and I understand it was the Cowboys. I get that. But I just think that AB's kind of got a second lease here on life, and Tom Brady and him always have this weird special connection for whatever that is, and I don't think AB is going away. Sure, some weeks it's going to be frustrating, but I think for the most part, this is a guy that you can put in your lineups where maybe going into the season you thought maybe he's a wide receiver 4. He's at least a 3, if not a 2, who might give you some 1 games. Yates, who is rising up your wide receiver ranks after this week?
It's Jamar Chase for me. I had Jamar Chase at wide receiver 21 for a good portion of the offseason. I was super excited for Chase being reunited with Joe Burrow. And then, of course, just naturally, like we had to move him down rankings just based on everything that we were hearing. But he was still a mid-range wide receiver 3 for me. I don't think he crossed 30 in my wide receiver rankings. Now he is back up to 26. So I am, I got him as a wide receiver 2. I had to take him as a wide receiver 2 in one league. I was not feeling great about that when it happened, but was buying into what he could be, as the season progressed. Yeah, I've got him at wide receiver 26. I feel comfortable with him as a borderline wide receiver 2 now.
I was thinking of you when I saw the Chase performance in the line. I was like, you know what? That must make Yates feel really good, because that's been one that we've been, just tumultuous about, going up and down, and the feelings of being excited and going, maybe it's too much. And then all of a sudden he's ahead of T. Higgins, and the next thing you know, he's dropping balls and bad things are happening.
It's so funny because during the preseason, the overreactions, there were people that had Chase lower in their pre-draft rankings that were out here like, oh, so you're telling me that Chase isn't a generational prospect like everyone built him up to be? And he comes out in week 1 and does this. Those people are really quiet right now.
They are really quiet. And look, it's only week 1. It can only get better from here. Welsh, who is the wide receiver you moved up after week 1?
I really like that Jamar Chase one.
It just came through from Adam Schefter. 49ers running back Raheem Mostert announces he is out for the season.
Wow. Okay.
Welcome,
there you go.
Elijah Mitchell.
And you know what? I just want to say this, too, because I think it was Mostert's wife had tweeted out that he was getting all kinds of hate on Twitter for getting hurt. What kind of a loser are you to go tweet at a guy who works as hard as this man has, who has tried to fight getting cut several times for multiple different teams? Grow up. I mean, come on, stop.
Yeah, don't tweet the guy. Keep
don't
it to
tweet
yourself
the guy
or just on your podcast.
I understand you're disappointed because of your fantasy team, but get over yourself. This is this man's, first of all, his well-being, and the second of all, his livelihood. So, I mean, be realistic here. And this is from the guy telling you don't draft him because he's injury prone, and I'm telling you don't troll him because that makes you a loser.
I love Raheem Mostert. Like, I couldn't tell. I mean, I came on this podcast and talked about him in the preseason. I love Raheem Mostert, but I 100%, you go through it like never again. And I had said this after that, never again will I do that. That's devastating. I mean, my reaction to Eli Mitchell is that it's devastating for me because I have shares of Raheem Mostert. It's my team. I love the guy, and I think he's an incredible talent. But we see this from time to time. It happens where these guys break. But also, that is clearly going to affect Eli Mitchell, Trey Sermon's value.
You know what else I'd be doing, Welsh? I'd be adding a lot of low-key Jeffrey Wilson Jr. shares for $0 this week.
If you got the bench spot to do it, I will tell you,
right.
I want to give my wide receiver, but do we all agree this just changed the fab percentages by probably 15% at least, whatever people were going to put in, don't you think?
All right, give me a number out of 100. Go ahead. Out of 100 here, it's week 1. Most people have 100 Yates. Give me the number for Mitchell.
I'm going to 20%.
I think that sounds about, I would say 18 to 20.
That's what you want to do, or you think that's what's going to happen?
I think that's what he wants to do.
Right. I mean, I would go, because I'm aggressive early on. That's, I think, where you have to be aggressive. I would have probably gone 40, and I think there's zero chance you get him over 50. I understand the hesitancy, and if Trey Sermon is out there, you should look at that, everything I said before, but this is going to make it more costly. So people are listening, if you want to get in, and if Mitchell works, I mean, that's the bet that you're making. If Mitchell works, there's now one less piece that is there to block him. And
all right, we got to let's get to your wide receivers, and we'll try to get to a couple questions real quick.
This might be dumb week 1 reaction, but Corey Davis, 5 catches, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Jets, I think, also showed their hands in how they're going to pass. Barrios, however you want to say it, Jose Barrios from the Twins. Braxton Barrios got the Jamison Crowder work, and I think Corey Davis created that connection with Zach Wilson and that trust. And I also we can see they have no running game whatsoever. There's no trustworthy tight end. I think Corey Davis is going to be the play for the rest of this year, and he was being drafted way outside of startable, so he moved up. And then I have like a dark horse. Anthony Schwartz was super impressive with Cleveland, by the way. Just everyone should look out for him. He got targets. I know Odell was out. He got some end around work. I think that is a low end, especially a dynasty guy for the rest of this year. But Davis,
funny you should mention him because Odell Beckham is the guy that I dropped in my rest of season rankings, and I already had him low, as most people already know who listens to the show. So yeah, I don't like it. You're not starting the season playing. That frustrates me. Yates, who did you drop in your rest of season wide receiver rankings this week?
I mean, the easy answer here is Brandin Aiyuk.
Didn't mean you had to take it.
You can't have. What's that?
Didn't mean you had to take the easy one.
Well, yeah. Right. No, I'm going to go with Brandin Aiyuk here. I mean, a guy that was being drafted as a potential wide receiver 2 for rosters, and he doesn't really start in week 1. That is super concerning. You got to drop him.
All right. Yeah. Welsh, how about for you?
Let me say, drop him in rest of season rankings. Do not drop him from your
roster.
Oh, yeah. I know that there are going to be people that are like, you told me to drop him.
What are you doing? Yates, you told me. I heard you say drop him. So I
probably would have said the same thing. My guy is Tyler Boyd. Yeah, you had the 3-headed monster that was there this past week. Jamar Chase, why I thought he was so impressive, got 90% of the offense, 62 snaps. Higgins and Boyd both had 51, but Higgins missed time in there. It doesn't mean that Boyd isn't going to be great, but they were all being clumped kind of together. There's a lot of heavy work on Boyd this coming week with props and stuff like that, and I think Higgins is a lock for who he is, and I think Jamar Chase proved to be the top guy. Mixon's going to get involved, and I just think that leaves he's the Brandon Cooks of that old school Rams, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks thing. Will Tyler Boyd have a couple weeks? Absolutely sure. Will he end up being a wide receiver 3 by the end of the year? I don't think so. I think this is Chase and Higgins, so I move Boyd down.
All right, let's get to a couple questions here from our listener mailbag. This is Coven over on Twitter, all the way from Germany, who says hello. So cool. LaVisca Chenault for Tim Patrick. Is this a thing? Thanks, guys. Which side would you... I mean, I'd much rather have LaVisca Chenault than Tim Patrick. I don't care if Tim Patrick gets a bump up here. We all agree, right? You can pull that trade off, you do it?
Yeah, I will take
if you get LaVisca.
I think that's what we're all saying, yeah. All right, let's go to Mr. Steel J wants to know, give Deebo Samuel receive Javonte Williams in a PPR league. Welsh, what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, to my heart here.
I know. These
you know
are two
what?
of your favorites.
I might do that because I'm assuming you got Deebo as a wide receiver 3-4, and Williams has got second half upside of an RB2. Mm-hmm. So it hurts maybe a little bit right now, pending depth. But yeah, I think I would be comfortable. I'd be comfortable not doing that, and I think it'd go either way. But you just side on running backs, that I think I would be cool with doing that.
Yates, how about you?
I want the running back depth. I will take Javonte Williams there.
Make it 3 for 3. Last one here. I am going to try my best to say it. Fritjof Hoek, which sounds like I'm pretty sure he lives in a hobbit hole somewhere in the Shire. Fritjof Hoek. But trading away Kareem Hunt and Emmanuel Sanders for Najee Harris, full PPR. If you could pull that off, good on you. Because this week the Raiders come to town for the Steelers. Get all the Najee. That's another guy we did not mention, but I'm glad we're closing it off there. If you can get Najee Harris on the cheap right now, do it right now. Buffalo.
Precious. Give me my precious. Absolutely
so
do
we're
that.
all in agreement on that one? Yes, everybody?
Yes.
All right,
100%.
good. We're going to close the show on that. Great stuff as always. You could follow the Welsh over on the Twitter machine at IsItTheWelsh and check out In This League. Join the ITL Army over on Patreon. Welsh, it's always a pleasure to chat with you, to see your beautiful face, and to talk some football with you. What do you and Bogman got going cooking at the ITL these days?
I appreciate it. Thank you. And I appreciate anybody watching, too, seeing my big head. You guys are so centered well in my head, so in everybody's face, it looks like,
we fixed
like
that
an orange on a toothpick. It's huge.
Chris does that in post. He fixed it all. All our heads
okay,
become
good.
the same
Head
size.
de-shrinker.
Yeah.
No, the In This League Fantasy Football Podcast off and running. We drop one. We got one later this week. We have the wonderful Bob Harris coming on this week.
Bobby.
If people want to check that out. But just check out on Twitter. Do the Patreon, patreon.com/ITL Army. Bogman, I've been playing Madden. We've been Madden streaming it. I beat him 5 straight games the other night, and he was not happy.
We're going to talk about that on the IDP show tomorrow.
Yep, we're on Twitch, and I had a perfect, like I said, I had a perfect gambling Sunday. I'll never have it again. It's going to ruin me because I'll want to gamble more, but I was like 7 for 7, And apparently I'm amazing at prop bets for now. Until
For
this
week
week.
one.
Now I just jinxed it.
Yeah,
so
so
but thank you guys. I always have fun with you. Have fun, Joe. I mean, I've known you forever.
Yeah.
And Kyle, I appreciate you allowing me to come on and hang out with you and the wonderful audience.
And not just the head shrinking devices we have here, but also
Yeah.
my playbook. Don't forget about that. The trade analyzer that's available right now, so you can make all the trades you need to go and crush your leagues. FantasyPros.com/myplaybook to get that. And don't forget about FantasyPros.com/offers, a $10 deposit, and then enter a contest. You get 6 free months of the Hall of Fame package. That's a $65 value. That gets you my playbook, the trade analyzer, the waiver wire assistant, the autopilot, and everything else in between that you need to manage all of your rosters. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh and the Yates, it's the Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.